Kyle here from allmusikreviews.blogspot.com. So I'm going to do a video. It might be a series, it might not. This might just be a one-off, or maybe I'll do one more. So I mentioned it when I did Silverchair Disassociative video last week, how it's surprising that Mike Portnoy, formerly of Dream Theater, now of, Transatlantic, Liquid Tend to Experiment, Sons of Apollo, the Winery Dogs, Neil Morse Band, the Neil Morse Band, etc., Flying Colors. So I've always, since I discovered Dream Theater, he's always been the one member. I've always liked reading about what the other members' tastes are, of course, but Dream Theater became this melting pot of influences, and then their tastes in music and their backgrounds, like the Rush and Yes and Pink Floyd, and Genesis and Yes, or I mentioned Yes. You name them, their influences. Of course, the Metallicas and Iron Maidens, and then other stuff like U2. So I always enjoyed seeing what Mike Portnoy was listening to, and he influenced. He introduced many bands and artists to me. It's a long list. Maybe I'll do a video on that, like my top 10 artists Mike Portnoy introduced to me. But the thing is, I was discovering new artists, especially in the last 15 to 20 years, at the same time, and I hung out on his message board. Because it went back to when he was in reading interviews, and then the You'd Say Jam, which I was sort of on the Jam mailing list, but really was Mike Portnoy's message board, his forum, where there was all this talk about new bands and stuff, and he would have his quote-unquote hero of the day. Then he later used Twitter and Facebook and Instagram for that kind of stuff, although he doesn't do it as much for music. Occasionally, it seems like he's dropping new band names in his albums of the year, which he's always done, but also on podcasts and YouTube videos he's on. So in the 2000s especially, and then maybe a little bit of the 2010s, I can definitely say that my tastes and his tastes don't cross over as much as they once did, for better or for worse. Everyone's got different tastes, to change, but definitely among his message board, and then among the circles of the Dream Theater fan base and the progressive rock and progressive metal fan base, we would see him catch on or introduce us to, I owe a lot of bands in that period of time I got introduced to from him. Ours was one of them. It wasn't, Dredge wasn't directly from him, but seeing him talk about Dredge really helped. And then when they did Progressive Nation and Progressive Nation at Sea, Porcupine Tree, the bands that opened for them, Pain of Salvation, Porcupine Tree, and Steven Wilson later didn't open for him, but he talked about Steven Wilson. He even worked with Steven Wilson on OSI. But then I was discovering a lot of bands myself, other bands from the forum members or other places, and they were buzzed about. A lot of them were buzzed about and talked about. So I'm going to go over a list of bands that, from my memory and my experience reading as much of following Mike Portnoy's lists, and I've never seen him talk about for whatever reason. Maybe I've missed it. I apologize if I have, or because it took me to ask about the Monkees. One question he said, "Oh yeah, I'm a fan of the Monkees. I know the Monkees, of course." And Ben Sinister was a breath of fresh air when he mentioned of being a fan, and then they opened for Flying Colors. I'd been a fan of Ben Sinister and even mentioned them on the forum, but I'm not going to mention Ben Sinister because he's a fan of Ben Sinister. Actually, his sister really loves Ben Sinister too, and the Deer Hunter. But these are all bands that were at least buzzed about to varying degrees on the message board and on different various progressive rock circles. So first is Fair to Midland. I know Mike Portnoy was a fan of, he had Carnival's album Sound Awake on his end of year list in 2009, but he never, it's 2009 or maybe, yeah, since 2009. Carnival and Fair to Midland, their fan bases cross over a lot. Stylistically, they're similar. Fair to Midland's from Texas. Carnival is from Australia. Now, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it, but they got a lot of momentum being on Serge Tankian's label. I mean, Mike Portnoy's mentioned being a System of a Down fan, but as much as they were talked about on the message boards, they toured a lot, never happened for a 4 or 5 year window of period of time. Fair to Midland was buzzed about, and I was really surprised because they're a heavy enough band that they would probably appeal to him. They have the progressive elements. They even have keyboards and soaring vocals. Their vocals aren't run of the mill. I don't know. Maybe he never got into Daryl's singing, but they're the first one that I was. To this day, I'm still surprised I've never seen him mentioned. So maybe he knows him and I just don't know. So the second one is Caddisfly. They didn't get quite the same degree of popularity, but for a good 2 years, this album specifically, Set Sail to Prairie, and they were talked about. They're on Prog Archives. They're a very popular band among Dredge fans, but they became somewhat popular among Dream Theater fans. And this record, by some, is considered a great record. Now, the vocals are not the easiest to digest for a new listener. So maybe he listened to them and, just the vocals didn't do enough for him. He didn't bother. But maybe he never heard them. But, I personally and some other people started topics on them on his forum and never saw him chime in, But who knows? So, Freddie Midland and Caddisfly aren't active anymore, but here's a band that is technically still active. Mew. Kind of surprised, and I always kind of related Mew slightly to Sigur Rós. And, well, I haven't seen Mike Portnoy. That's another one I forgot to include, but post-rock has never been anything I've seen Mike Portnoy talk very much about. But I did see him talk about Sigur Rós at least once or twice. He mentioned them on maybe with Heroes of the Day or his end-of-the-year lists. So, Mew isn't exactly like Sigur Rós. There's certainly somewhat of an appeal, but just, Mew, yeah, their vocal style is kind of high-pitched, but, they're on a major label. Maybe they were too much in that kind of vein of the Pitchfork audience that Portnoy either didn't want to check them out, or, I don't know, maybe he saw the video with Hulk Hogan and the special, I don't know. But it's not like they're an unknown band. You can find their music at times different places. It's just the vocal style might be, again, not necessarily something that's as easily digestible, and they've influenced many bands. I'm trying to think of any of the bands that he has mentioned liking. I don't even know. But he likes bands like the Pillbugs and the Lemon Twigs and Flaming Lips. And there's bands that the Pitchfork audience knows that he likes. So I'm surprised that, and they are progressive. So I don't know. I'm not surprised why Portnoy has never commented or mentioned liking Mew, but I'd be curious if he does, if he knows them, if he's ever listened to them. Maybe he knows the Pokemon. All right, so the next one I have here is Pure Reason Revolution, like Mew. They're British, or Mew is from Denmark, but they're from Europe. But, he liked Ocean Size. Ocean Size toured with Pure Reason Revolution. And I know they one time did a show with Mew. There's a lot of connections between those three bands, but Pure Reason Revolution also opened for Porcupine Tree. There's a lot of Porcupine Tree connections, but, they were on Sony briefly for this album, The Dark Third. That's, in terms of exposure, they did play South by Southwest, where they were going to in 2006. But I don't know. I guess, again, on his forum, they were buzzed about a bit, and on the progressive rock circles, they played at Nearfest. In fact, he might have been there that year. I don't remember. It was 2007. So at least he played Nearfest with Transatlantic and Liquid Tension Experiment. And he might have even attended more than once. And he has a house in Pennsylvania, like eastern Pennsylvania. So going to Nearfest would have been Northeast Rock Festival somewhat easy. I don't know if he followed it religiously each year, but if he would have gone or known about it, they put out a couple albums and they did the comeback. But, again, this would be a band that I would think easily he would like if he doesn't have a, issue with, contrasting male and female vocals. But I know he likes Riverside. I'm pretty sure he's commented on Riverside before. So Ocean Size, Riverside, why Pure Reason Revolution? It's kind of contemporaries. Who knows? A lot of music out there, you only have so much time. So here's one that, I'm not 100% certain I've never seen him. I'm pretty sure I've never seen him mention Orphanland. Israeli sort of progressive death metal with Oriental elements, or not Oriental, ethnic Middle Eastern elements rather. I'm really surprised because Steven Wilson worked with them. He mixed their album, the War Warrior record. Yeah, all the Steven Wilson connections, you think Portnoy would be at least aware of them. They're a metal band. They have the connections with Opeth fans. They played the Prague Power USA Festival 3 times or something, 2 or 3 times. And of course he attended one year and then played at least one other time with, I think it was Sons of Apollo, or his Dream Theater tribute did the Glass Prison, I think it was called. Or no, whatever. It's named after one of the lyrics in the 5A suite, but not the Glass Prison. But yeah, I would be very surprised if he wouldn't like them. But does he know them? I would think he would. They're not an unknown band. They've been around for 25 years. You know, they've had a pretty big following. They're from Israel. I don't know. He probably knows them, but you know, I'd love to find out what his take on them. Is this his favorite album, the Mabul album, or is it one of the others? Because they have a lot of really good albums. So I'll add two more. A video that I just did and a video that I got coming up. As I mentioned, Silverchair and the Silverchair Disassociative video. You know, he loves Muse, the band Muse, and so these both have similar, you know, connections to them. I don't know. Maybe he knew the early Silverchair from the 90s, and so that's why he never checked out the later Silverchair. But if this album and Diorama and the Disassociates album, I could totally see Portnoy liking. But, you know, he doesn't like Sabotage, you know. So there's bands that you think he might like that he never really got into. So, you know, everyone's got different tastes, and Portnoy's tastes are great. They're very widespread, and he has a wealth of knowledge and a large base of taste in rock and metal music. But I don't know, I just think this album, you know, it's very melodic, very symphonic, very sort of progressive in a lot of ways. It would probably appeal to him, given that he loves bands like Muse and, he likes, well, the Deer Hunter for that matter, or Queen, or, you know, you name it. So the last one, which I'm working on, I should be making a video soon, is Mute Math. They were also another band that was buzzed about a lot for a little while in the mid to late 2000s, early 2010s on his forum. Are they progressive rock? Kind of, not really. I don't know. They've always I thought they would appeal a lot to Police fans, but which the singer, especially the first couple records, Mute Math, the singer does sound a fair amount like Sting. But you know, I remember once talking to a guy at one other show, and I asked him about Mute Math. It's like, oh, they're like Muse, but not as good, which I sort of can follow. But they're really good. The drummer's really good. I know that the drummer is a big Dream Theater fan. At least he was compared to, he quoted about Dream Theater and Darren King, the now ex-drummer. But, and they're also a crazy live band. In fact, I'm going to get into that more, but I'd say that Mute Math, their studio albums are really good. Some of them are bordering on great. They're even better live, and so if Portnoy ever saw them live, his feeling about them might be different. I don't know, or he would at least remember them. But you know, I mean, maybe he didn't follow all the topics, even the ones that got a lot of replies and stuff like that. And but Mute Math, given he likes Muse, given he likes Mew, maybe he didn't like Mew, but Muse and there's some other bands you could probably put them in the category of. Dredge would be another one. He's a Dredge fan. He's mentioned liking Dredge. Mute Math probably would appeal to him. So I don't know. I mean, there's other bands I'm not thinking, like, I'm trying to remember, like Renaissance and stuff like that. That's a lot of older bands that, you know, he doesn't like, or not so much he doesn't like, but I've never seen him comment on. As much as I've seen him comment on dozens if not hundreds of bands, there's bands like Mute Math that at least I never caught him make a comment about. Although when he did his vinyl A to Z, there were some bands in there I didn't know. There were a few of them that were in I didn't know he had music from. So if he ever does more of those, or just following him on some of the other YouTube channels and podcasts, some of this stuff might come out. There's some other bands that I've never seen him remark about or being a fan of that would be interesting. I mean, I never, like, it was not the Rolling Stones, but there's some bands from the past, like the 70s and 80s, like, I never seen him talk about, like, Soft Machines. So there's a lot of bands like that too that would also fit into the category of does Mike Portnoy like this band? That's kind of actually the topic of this. I'd like to know if Mike Portnoy knows and likes this band. So anyway, but thank you for watching. If you like the Monkees and Michael Nesmith, you know, another two that, I mean, he does like the Monkees. I don't know if he's ever heard any of the Michael Nesmith soul stuff. Not sure how much into country or country rock he is, but anyway, if you know of any bands or artists that you think Mike Portnoy would like, but has never made a comment on liking, I'd love to hear it. You know, please mention it in the comments. I would actually say the same thing about Steven Wilson. In fact, maybe I'll do a series also about Steven Wilson, because there's definitely some bands that I could, kind of some of the stuff I mentioned today even, that would be interesting to hear Steven Wilson's take, like Fair to Midland. I've never seen him mention anything about Carnival or Fair to Midland. Tool, of course, but it'd be interesting to hear not interesting here, but it just interesting to make a list of like all these bands that you love, but you love these people's tastes that you are a fan of their music, and you're just surprised they haven't at this point. Like it took how many years before Mike or anyone really mentioned Ben Sinister, and so But thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.